There were 15 Kahnawake men whose bodies were never found. Snowe Jonaratate Diom, age 19. Peter Odzitsagete Delabust, age 19. Angus Kahnawa'kehró Blue, age 23. James Kahnawa'kehró Goodleaf, age 26. Angus Lahache Montour, age 24. Joseph Oride Delabust, age 44. Andrew Dio Rice, age 43. Louis Oronyagdagu Jocks, age 43. John Skawenatsu Jocko, age 36. Michael Ganerio Adams, age 23. Louis Sabioguires Delabust, age 36. Louis de Wahanode Deer, age 33. Louis Oseraze Lee, age 20. Joseph Gadzitsagoro Mitchell, age 22. Thomas Garhadodu Bruce, age 24. There were 18 men whose remains were eventually returned to Kahnawake. Louis Honoradineta Albany, buried on September 2nd, 1907. John de Wazerage Norton, buried September 2nd, 1907. Louis Arun Yowana Delabust, buried September 2nd, 1907. Thomas Kahnawake Jocks, buried September 2nd, 1907. Joseph de Gayanawana Lafave, buried September 2nd, 1907. Napoleon Kahnawa'kehró Lahache, buried September 2nd, 1907. James de Gahuanzere Delabust, buried September 10th, 1907. Joseph de Garuyanzere Delabust, buried September 2nd, 1907. James Onyaragete Mitchell, buried September 10th, 1907. John de Horuyate Morris, buried September 10th, 1907. Thomas da Yohawi Deer, buried September 12th, 1907. Mitchell Kahnawa'kehró Delil, buried September 12th, 1907. Joseph Tawenayeri French, buried September 12th, 1907. Laurent Solomon Awinahawi Angus, buried September 15th, 1907. Joseph Oseraze Deer, buried September 12th, 1907. Frank Sagogonhiata Kirby, buried September 23rd, 1910.
Segozo. Welcome to a special episode of KTV. August 29th marks an important date in Kahnawake's history. It was on August 29th, 100 years ago, where 76 men died when the Quebec Bridge collapsed into the St. Lawrence River in Lévis, Quebec. Of those 76 men who passed away, 33 were from Kahnawake. You heard their names being read at the start of this show. KTV has dedicated this entire episode to their memory. Their passing touched almost every family in our community. With more, here's Brady Cross.
With the premature passing of the 33 men who worked on the Quebec Bridge, many families felt the loss. With approximately 235 descendants in the community at present, we spoke to a few of them in regards to their fallen ancestors.
My late father, Frank Goodleaf, was semi-orphaned, I guess, in 1907 when the bridge went down, at the age of approximately 1 year old, maybe a little bit more. And it changed whatever his life was supposed to be or should have been. His mother was widowed and like many of the other young ladies at the time, so she remarried and started a new family. Yeah. Although I understand that my other grandfather, Peter Stacy, Skarunyadi, was working on that bridge at the time, and somehow he and some others came back to Kahnawake for a wedding or some kind of celebration. So I had one grandfather left out of that disaster. I guess life got, for my dad anyway, it became a little normal. This place where we are right now, he kind of grew up over here. This used to be, that part of the beach here was Wigwam Beach at the time. So, but my family, my grandfather, I suppose Jimmy, left my dad as a survivor, and from him came 6 other children, and everybody seems to be doing well.
I did have an uncle who was killed in that, Mitchell DeLille. He was a young man who was just starting a family, and I guess that's what I think about. I think about the possibility of having all those relations with the children that he could have had, and how he could have helped the community, and how the community could have been that much larger. And when you multiply that by all the people that were killed, we did lose a lot of people. It was a sacrifice, I guess, that they did, because they did leave their community to go far away to work, and it became something that other people followed, and I guess that's a legacy that they have left with us, and I think they would be proud, wherever they are, of this legacy that our people eventually became steel workers, and a continuous stream to support the community. And I guess he is one of the people of my relatives that were steel workers, and I'm really proud of that, and I really respect the memory of his tragedy.
Actually, I am not a descendant, but my mother-in-law was married to an Angus Montour who perished. As you see, he was a very handsome gentleman, and it said circa 1904, and so they weren't married very long, unfortunately. And then my mother-in-law, who was Josephine Marquis, married again in about 1910 to my father-in-law, Peter Montour. As a matter of fact, I went over to visit Mrs. Mike Nolan. I've been wanting to go and see her for some time, so finally last night I called her, and I was over there to see her, and I wondered if maybe she might know about this gentleman, Angus, whether it could have been an uncle, a part of her family, but she really didn't know. One person suggested that I go and speak to Zonu Gili Kirby. So maybe I'll go to the hospital and show this to her. She just might know something about it, what family he's from.
I have the privilege, I guess, today to talk about my great-grandfather who lost his life on the Quebec Bridge almost 100 years ago. Napoleon Kahnawa'kehró, Lahache. He lost his life leaving behind 4 children. How did it affect me personally? I grew up in a household with a mother, father, grandmother, grandfather. I said this many times, and I often wondered why they tried to keep me away from the trade. I understood only later on in life, as I got older, that there was a reason for that. It was such a hard time for my grandfather when he grew up, losing his father at a very young age. There were 4 children taken right out of the house and sent to residential school. The story I've been told is that when the 4 children went to residential school, I guess when the break came around Christmas or something to come back home, only 3 kids returned. They never told the family. One of them had drowned off in residential school, so he lost his sister. So, that actually even compounded the incident even more. Growing up, I remember turning 18 years old. First thing I did, I went to see the late Bill Malush, and Bill ended up sponsoring me to get my book in ironwork out of 7-Eleven out of Montreal. And 18 years old, jumped in a car and went to New York City and see if I could get a job. Ended up no luck, here I am. I guess somebody's green, never did work in his life at 18, didn't get a job. Fortunate, my family when I got back said, "Warren, you don't need to ironwork here. We need you to stay in school, go to school." And only after all this time has elapsed and my uncles have passed on and my grandfather passed on and my father's passed on that I suddenly realized the hard work they did. I mean, they told me to stay in school, and I understand why now. And you know, I just have to look at all the hardships all the men in the community are facing every week. And I have nephews and a young daughter. The father takes off to New York. You know, he's working in Manhattan, and you know, I try to step in with them, and I certainly understand it's a very hard life, and it touches everybody in the community. But I think the effort put forward by the community on the 100-year anniversary is really something good, and it's given everyone time, actually a healing process. Here we are 4 generations later, and you know, we're still thinking of it. So hopefully we can take these lessons and apply them to all our future generations to come.
From our family tree, as they say in the language. I'm a descendant of John Zerage Norton, and he was one of the 33 who, I guess, perished on that August 29th, 1907. And I was looking at the building that's behind me now, because this is where the phone call was made roughly an hour after the accident had happened, and all the people came running here and were informed of who the losses were. So it must have been a dark day in Kahnawake, because our population at the time was between 15 and 1800, and at that very hour there was 24 widows in the community and 52 children, I believe, or something to that number, that became fatherless, uncle-less, and cousin-less to the different men, because there were different age groups that fell. This is a very special day in commemoration for our people, because what I say is, like, 17 of them were finally brought home and buried here in Kahnawake, and 16 of them were never found, and so they're floating within the waters of Kahnawake, and so we have to put a closure and have a healing ceremony for those of that never made it back to the territory. So with that, I'm saying, these men who were in the steel industry and trade also spoke the Kahnawake language, and so I'm sure we're going to hear a cry from the waters when we go to the ceremony in Quebec, and that's one of the reasons why it's so very important to carry the Kahnawake language to our children, and I think we're doing that today quite well. And because the new parents of the day are using this language, which was used by these 33 men who perished from this territory. So you can imagine losing 33 speakers at one time. That had to create a big hole in Kahnawake.
This disaster affected many members of the community. I myself just found out that I am somehow linked to the Quebec Bridge disaster, as my great-grandfather was off shift at the time of its falling. Also, my grand-aunt Margie Day witnessed the collapse of the bridge. So I went all these years without even knowing any of this. So for KTV, I'm Brady Cross.
The men of the Quebec Bridge disaster were once again honored on the 100th anniversary of that tragic event. Jean Daibo traveled up to the Quebec City region on August the 29th.
The day's events started off with a multi-denominational memorial service and a reenactment of that tragic day back in 1907, performed by a group of local actors and one Kahnawa'kehró, Kahnawa'kehró Gilbert, to a packed St. Ramuel Church in Lévis. Once that portion of the program was completed, Quebec City Police escorted crowds in attendance to the site of the Quebec Bridge on the south side of the St. Lawrence River for the unveiling of their future memorial. Presentations were made by various government dignitaries, including Chief Warren Lahache of the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. Chief Lahache congratulated the organizers and spoke about his own reconciling with the loss of a family member. Musical performances were presented by Jodakwate Gilbert, who sang about the plight of the iron worker in both Mohawk and English, and Kahnawake songstress Donna Jacobs, who sang a beautiful tradition Iroquoian melody.
I'm representing my grandfather, Napoleon Lahache, and it's been 100 years now. I never got to see him because I was born too late. He was, this all happened in 1907. So I'm here to do the best I can in his respect.
The ceremony was very moving. It was very beautiful. The reenactment of the actors that really had an impact when the woman was setting her table. At the time that the bridge actually fell, the rumbling that they recreated was terrifying. And you can just imagine how they felt being on the bridge and this happening. And then it was disaster. It was a major disaster.
The ceremony culminated with the naming of each victim lost in the collapse, while local school children carried flags bearing their names and a flower in their honor. It's been a long day, but it's been a good day, and we're back in Kahnawake safe and sound, and in time, just in time, to take part in the commemoration and the unveiling of the monument here in Kahnawake. Negi, KTV.
Thanks, Gene. Meanwhile, ceremonies and a parade were also held here in town. Sandra Goodleaf was one of the many people who turned out to remember the 100th anniversary of the Quebec Bridge disaster.
The commemoration in Kahnawake started with a parade beginning at the tunnel, including floats from different organizations. The first stop was the cross, where Joe McGregor opened with a few words of his Ohonda de Kahnawake, followed by Jimmy Goodleaf climbing the cross to hang the flag. The parade ended at the memorial site along the bike path.
Excellent day, excellent gathering. Nice to see, everybody coming together like we always do in this town when there's something special going on, and particularly honoring the ironworkers, and the people that have, worked hard to get this together. So, and very enjoyable to see, the elders and the ironworkers, teachers, the kids, community members, all in that big gathering, that march to come here for this honoring ceremony.
I thought it was great. It's a little hot, but it was great. It's the most exercise I've had in a while, but it's okay.
I thought the parade was awesome. I was walking with my fellow chief here and my brother over here from Tyndonega. They were a little slow, but I really enjoyed it. And coming from a family of iron workers, I'm up here representing our community, because we also have a lot of Mohawk iron workers from Akwesasne, and I'm proud to come up here to represent on behalf of my community. And I'm also proud to be a part of this ceremony.
Well, as you look about, you see a lot of happy faces, and it's a good, impressive turnout, in my opinion. And as for the structure, all you have to do is look at it. That is one very beautiful structure, well deserving for our 33 Mohawk men who passed away or were killed in their line of work 100 years ago today.
At exactly 5:37, the time the bridge collapsed 100 years ago, a bell went off while everybody stood in silence. At the same time, the MCK granite monument was unveiled. Many descendants were present to place stakes into the ground where trees will be planted to represent the 33 men who passed and the 3 survivors. 3 ancestors raised the Quebec Bridge banner, which was considered to be their last job as ironworkers and their final topping out. The commemorations and all of the day's events were felt deeply by all in attendance. The feeling was one of togetherness in keeping the memory of these men and their sacrifices alive for generations to come. Karakouhawi ni Yujets Danonegi KTV.